Around 12 to 13 years old, when I was in middle school, I noticed a major shift in opinions regarding video games. At the time, there was one genre of games that all of my peers had collectively agreed was the best. If you met someone who was playing games, you can bet your ass that their entire library was full of games part of this genre. And if you were going to talk to them about video games, it better be part of this miracle genre. If you even dared to bring up a turn-based RPG or, God forbid, a platformer, they were going to take you out back and shoot you. Okay, they wouldn't exactly do that, but you were definitely getting called cringe for enjoying Final Fantasy IX, and to a self-conscious 13-year-old, that feels exactly like getting shot. This elite genre that, according to most kids at my school, overshadowed any other type of game was the first-person shooter. Call of Duty and Halo ruled the school back in the day. Suddenly, people weren't asking me which starter I was picking in the latest Pokemon game, they were asking me if I was Team Olympia or Team M14. And like, is this even a debate? Judging. First-person shooters were definitely the most popular among my classmates, but really they were infatuated with anything that was gritty and mature. So games like GTA, Red Dead Redemption, and Assassin's Creed were all fair game and people wouldn't poke fun at you for enjoying them. At my school, there was this bizarre stigma associated with indulging in any kind of media aimed towards children. Like we weren't a bunch of literal middle schoolers. Like, God forbid that I, as a 12-year-old, enjoyed some Gravity Falls. So, as you'd expect, my classmates wouldn't be caught dead playing a Nintendo game. But there was one Nintendo game that I heard my classmates speak highly of. That game was Twilight Princess. I remember how they all praised the game's realistic art style and the quote-unquote super dark story. Some of them even had the gall to say that Twilight Princess was the only good Zelda game. The nerve! You'd think that I, as a Zelda fan, would have leapt at this opportunity to talk about the games, but I actually didn't like Twilight Princess when I was a kid. It was for a really lame and shallow reason too. I just didn't like the game's art style. That's it. Before you raise the pitchforks and light the torches, you should know that I love this game now, and it is one of my favorite Zelda games. I was just weirdly picky about video games as a kid. It was very stupid. Back then, I liked when my video games had whimsical and stylized visuals. Sly Cooper, Ni no Kuni, and obviously Wind Waker are all games that I loved as a kid. But if a game boasted super realistic graphics and desaturated colors, I almost immediately lost interest. It's why I used to really dislike Super Smash Bros. Brawl. No, not because of the tripping mechanic or anything even related to actual gameplay, I just didn't like the level of detail on Mario's overalls. Listen, I have grown up so much since then. In fact, just a few years later, when I was around 15 years old, I became drastically less finicky when it came to video game art styles. During this time, I really wanted to expand my horizons, so I was playing all kinds of games that I initially dismissed when I was younger. One day when I was looking for something to play, I spotted my copy of Twilight Princess that was blanketed in a layer of dust. Memories of middle school instantly came flooding back to me, and I recalled everything my classmates had told me about this game. A lot of them told me that Twilight Princess was actually quote-unquote super messed up for a kid's game. They told me about horrifying monsters, bone-chilling dungeons, and specific cutscenes that even gave some kids nightmares. As a kid who managed to brave his way through Majora's Mask, I thought, there's no way that they can make something scarier than that, right? Well, today was going to be the day that I finally found out for myself. Welcome to another episode in a series where we examine the elements of horror and other spooky stuff we can find in non-horror games. In today's episode, we're talking about The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Playing Twilight Princess after all these years kind of felt like coming home. At this point in my life, I hadn't played a Zelda game in a very long time. Wandering around Ordon Village and meeting all of Link's friends brought me back to when I first explored Kokiri Forest. A while back, I remember seeing a few complaints online claiming that Twilight Princess was too similar to Ocarina of Time. While I do agree that there are quite a few similarities between the two games, I never felt like this was being overdone. In fact, I feel like Twilight Princess does a great job at utilizing these similarities to subvert my expectations. When I first played Twilight Princess, I quickly noticed the parallels to the beginning of Ocarina of Time. This Link was also settled in a rural community where he's the only Hylian in town. He's even living in another sick treehouse. I was so jealous of that thing as a kid. Link's relationship with his childhood friend Ilia immediately reminded me of Saria, and when the village kid Talo blocked Link's path and demanded his sword, bitter memories of Mito had resurfaced. Noticing all of these little commonalities between the two games had me convinced that I knew how it was all going to play out. Link, for one reason or another, was going to leave town, head to Hyrule, and share an emotional goodbye with his close friend Ilia. I felt so confident in this assumption that I was caught completely off guard when Boblins crashed their way into Ordon Spring, shooting Ilia with an arrow, kidnapping the village children, and knocking Link unconscious. I was utterly dumbfounded, and from this moment onward, totally enthralled. Racing after the Boblins on foot, Link discovers the path to Faron Woods has been obstructed. By a curtain of twilight. This bizarre void stretches across the entire forest, ensnaring the woods in eternal dusk. The barrier is covered with golden markings unlike anything we've seen in previous adventures. Before we have any time to even wonder what this could possibly be, a dark hand bursts out of the void and clutches onto Link. In the blink of an eye, Ordon's ever-reliable farmhand has been plunged into a nightmare. In the Twilight Realm, an amber haze envelops the land like an immortal sunset. Strange black pixels dance in the air and drift upward into the pale skies above. The realm is infested with shadowy creatures on the hunt for any unfortunate souls trapped in the twilight. These unlucky individuals have been robbed of their physical forms, now existing as spirits forever haunting a world without light. In my opinion, the Twilight Realm is one of the most frightening locations in Zelda history. For me, it's up there with the Shadow Temple and Ikana Canyon. This is due to a multitude of reasons, of course, but before I go off the rails, let's first talk about this area's iconic music. This is something I mentioned in my Ocarina of Time video, but when I first watched someone enter the Great Deku Tree and I heard that mesmerizing tune, it stuck with me forever. A very similar experience happened when I first heard the track that you're listening to now. This is Twilight, and if I had never played Twilight Princess, you couldn't have done anything to convince me that this song came from a Zelda game. This track feels so otherworldly and disturbing, but it's also kind of peaceful in its own way. That synth just melts my brain, dude. This song perfectly captures how alien the realm feels on a first-time playthrough, but it also hints at the realm's soothing qualities that have been snuffed out by the Usurper King and his legion of monsters. This is undoubtedly one of the best Zelda tracks of all time. Something about that synth used in this track reminds me a lot of Silent Hill. After doing a little digging, I found out that multiple songs in Twilight Princess use a variety of samples from a handful of sample CDs. There's this awesome video by Majoran which showcases a bunch of these samples and where they appear in-game. It's a rad video and I've got a link to it in the description if you want to check it out. I bring this up because a couple of samples used in Twilight Princess come from a sample CD called Distorted Reality. This sample CD was released in 1995 by Spectrasonics and it was produced by Eric Persing. Funnily enough, Silent Hill's legendary composer Akira Yamaoka also used many samples from Distorted Reality in numerous Silent Hill tracks. Resting Comfortably, Sickness Unto Foolish Death, and Nightmarish Waltz, to name a few. That synth we hear in Twilight also originates from Distorted Reality. This specific sample is called Salia, and it sounds like this. A few people online have pointed out how Twilight sounds very similar to a couple of tracks from Silent Hill 2, specifically White Noise and Pianissimo Epilogue. Give it a listen. Now, it might sound like both of these songs use Salia from Distorted Reality, but that may not be the case. In Pianissimo Epilogue, that familiar sound we hear is a different sample entirely from another sample CD called Bizarre Guitar. In White Noise, that synth sound originates from yet another sample CD called Distorted Reality 2, Darkness and Light. This one was also produced by Eric Persing. So as it turns out, all three tracks use entirely different samples, which is really interesting because I was fully convinced that Salia was being used in White Noise and Pianissimo. I mean, even if it's not, Twilight is still totally nailing that Silent Hill vibe. I feel like this mental connection only amplifies the unease we experience as we explore the Twilight Realm. Can we get a mod that plays the Otherworld siren whenever we pass through a curtain of Twilight? That'd be sick. Another factor that heightens those feelings of unfamiliarity and anxiety we experience in the Twilight Realm is the challenge of adapting to a new playable character. It's time we finally address the blue-eyed beast in the room. When Link first enters the Twilight Realm, he's protected by the Triforce of Courage. Instead of turning into a fear-ridden spirit, he transforms into a wolf. That transformation scene is pretty gnarly too. Link is trembling on all fours as the camera begins spinning around him. His heart beats faster and faster until he lets out a blood-curdling scream. Once he transforms, he immediately goes unconscious, possibly from the physical trauma. The horrifying nature of this scene is pretty reminiscent of the Deku transformation scene in Majora's Mask. And what's funny about that is that both of these scenes were inspired by nightmares from someone on the dev team. In an interview on Miiverse, Mari-chan spoke with the elusive Eiji Aonuma about Twilight Princess HD. In this interview, Mari-chan asks why they had Link specifically turn into a wolf instead of any other creature. Aonuma responds, "To tell you the truth, once when I had to go overseas for work, I randomly had this dream that I was a wolf shut up inside a jail cell. While I was pondering why on earth I'd been a wolf in my dream, I got the urge to try putting it in a game. That's why I never really gave any thought to the idea of Link turning into another animal." This guy has the wildest dreams. In an interview, part of the Iwata Asks series, Aonuma shared another dream where he was chased by Dekus and woke up screaming. I'm afraid that this is just what game development does to somebody. If any game devs are out there watching this, hats off to you. I don't know how the hell you do it, but I have mad respect for you. In this interview, Aonuma also shared some early concept art for Wolf Link. In these images, we can see that Wolf Link was originally going to be darker and covered in markings similar to the ones we see on the Twilight and the Shadow Beasts. Personally, I'm a very big fan of this design where Wolf Link is shrouded in a misty darkness and has this cool electric blue eye. Don't say what you think it looks like. I know what you think it looks like. Don't say it. Don't ruin this for me. Adapting to Wolf Link's controls first thing in the Twilight Realm went a long way in making everything feel confusing and uneasy. When we first took control of Link in Ordon, we had a calm environment to relax in as we got a hang of the controls. Here in the Twilight, you've got to figure it out before those strange demonic creatures from another realm eat you alive. When I first saw a Shadow Beast, I was petrified because I thought they were like aliens or something. It's something about those long tendrils and the patterns all over their bodies that make them look like something I'd see in a Metroid game. I get a very strong Metroid vibe from the Shadow Vermin and their slithery little tentacles. Ugh. These guys are unnerving as hell, but somehow the concept art is on a whole nother level. This concept art comes from Hyrule Historia, and just take a look. These designs rock. These Shadow Beasts are just so creepy. I'm a big fan of their more slender design and those giant mouths full of jagged teeth. In the second image, it looks like that Shadow Beast is dripping with darkness. It's a nice touch. I love it. Whew, that first image though? Christ on a crutch, that guy's terrifying. I really wish we could have had this guy as like a mini boss in the Twilight Realm or something. Something you'll notice about this design specifically is that it's completely black and white. If you didn't already know, the Twilight Realm was originally going to be black and white instead of that vibrant haze we see in the final game. We can even see this version of the realm in the 2005 E3 trailer. So maybe this Shadow Beast design was created early in development to better match that monochrome aesthetic. In the trailer, we even see a flying enemy that's purely black and white. Funnily enough though, the Shadow Beasts in this trailer do have color, and so does Midna. My guess is that maybe the devs had decided at this point that only creatures from the Twilight Realm would retain their color. It's an interesting idea, but I think I prefer what we got in the final game. On the cutting room floor, we can find an unused model for a creature that could be an earlier version of the Shadow Beast, or possibly just another monster from the Twilight Realm. We can even see this guy in action during the 2005 GDC trailer for the game. This design is pretty cool too, but he kinda looks like Wildmutt, right? Stepping away from the designs of these monsters, their origins are pretty disturbing as well. We learn from Midna that the Shadow Beasts are actually denizens of the Twilight Realm that have been corrupted by dark magic. In this state, the Twilight submit to their master's will, attacking anyone the Usurper King views as a threat. When the Shadow Beasts attack people, they can even mutate them, turning their victims into even more Shadow Beasts. A man in Kakariko Village recounts the time a woman from the general store was attacked by a Shadow Beast. He explains that a group from town went to save her, but when they arrived, the woman was nowhere to be found. Instead, there were 2 Shadow Beasts there waiting for them. In the Twilight Princess manga, we actually get to see what it looks like when a Shadow Beast transforms one of their victims. I know that the manga isn't canon, but I think little moments like these are pretty cool and worth mentioning. I read a good chunk of the manga while writing the script, and I think you'd enjoy it if you're like a big Twilight Princess fan. Just know that the story isn't canon, so there are a few times where the authors took some creative liberties here and there. Before moving on, I also want to acknowledge the music that plays whenever we fight Shadow Beasts. This track is plainly called Shadow Beast Battle, and I hated listening to it on my first playthrough. Not only did it creep me out, but something about that buzzy noise made my skin crawl. Something about those noises made it feel like bugs that were trying to pry their way into my ears. It was like this track was perfectly created in a lab to make me frown whenever I heard it. So there's a variation of this track called Twilight Battle, and the top comment on the video for this song is, "The sound of 100 bees farting beans into your ears." So, yeah, now whenever I hear this song, I think of that comment, and the song has just lost all of its scare factor now, so The last major thing I want to bring up regarding the Twilight Realm is the host of spirits that linger here. The spirits appear to the naked eye as nothing more than flaming spheres, but with our heightened wolf senses we can see the spirit's original form. This is what happens to those unfortunate enough to be confined in Twilight. These individuals continue to exist, but they're unaware that they've passed into a spirit form. The spirits also lack any knowledge of being trapped within the Twilight Realm. However, this doesn't mean that they can find comfort in blissful ignorance. Spirits within the Twilight Realm are plagued with fear and uncertainty. They know that something is wrong. These feelings are only exacerbated by the sudden appearance of alien-looking monsters. Creatures powerful enough to crush Hyrulean soldiers with ease, resurrect their fellow beasts who fall in combat, and even transmogrify their victims into more monsters. It's a hell that I wouldn't wish on anybody. My only wish is that we could take the suffering of these people, triple it, and give it to Tingle. 400 rupees to decipher a Triforce chart is asinine. Fuck you. I hope your games never get localized. When I first played Twilight Princess and witnessed the spirits fighting for survival in a world teeming with monsters, it actually reminded me of countless zombie films and games, especially a specific scene at Kakariko Village. This particular moment occurs when we break our way into a sanctuary full of spirits. Using our wolf senses reveals that these spirits are the Ordon village kids who were kidnapped at the beginning of the game. The kids are all huddled around a man named Renato who attempts to calm them down. Meanwhile, a man named Barnes is beginning to spiral. He goes on about how hopeless the situation is, insinuating that it's only a matter of time before they all turn into shadow beasts. Renato snaps at Barnes, the kids start crying, and the entire moment is just dripping with hopelessness. Again, it's a nightmare scenario that reminds me of those scenes from zombie flicks where survivors are holed up in a safe house unsure of what to do next. Tensions rise as supplies dwindle and salvation becomes nothing more than an unattainable dream. That apocalyptic zombie outbreak vibe gets even stronger when we explore the rest of Kakariko Village. Multiple buildings have their windows and doorways sealed off with planks of wood and steel beams. This crude last-minute defense measure is ultimately ineffective at keeping the shadow beasts at bay. As Wolf Link, we're able to locate several openings that we use to enter these empty buildings. It's possible that the shadow beasts also exploited these same openings to infiltrate each building and lay waste to any survivors inside. Even if there isn't a window or a burrow to dig through, the shadow beasts are capable of creating their own opening if need be. For instance, one of the houses in Kakariko Village has a giant hole in the roof. Inside the house, we see signs of a struggle. Planks of wood and broken glass are strewn about the room. The pictures on the wall are all crooked, and the bed frames have been completely destroyed. There's no doubt that whoever was inside fell victim to the shadows. Exploring all of these empty homes even after the twilight fades is so quietly chilling. Before other characters move into these buildings, we find that they lack any background music. Instead of hearing that usual inside a house theme, all we hear is silence. It feels like a bitter reminder that while we can restore the light that was taken from the land, we can never restore the lives that were lost in this carnage. The only way we can liberate the spirits and finally dispel the twilight is by collecting the tears of light held by the shadow insects. Only then are we able to cut through the twilight and reclaim the light that was stolen. With the twilight finally gone, the spirits regain their physical forms, free from their dark nightmare. Link is able to transform back into a human, and he even gets this sick-ass outfit. Guys, I'm being 100% honest here. This Link is one of the best to ever do it. He looks so damn cool. Our actions also help restore the 4 spirits of light: Ordona, Faron, Eldin, and Lanayru. These mystical spirits protect the 4 major provinces in Hyrule and offer assistance to Link on his journey. Faron is of course the best light spirit for giving Link this amazing outfit. Also, while Link does lose his old fit, Faron just throws it in the bin, I guess. He does get to keep his earrings. Faron knows what's good, the earrings just tie it all together. The spirits of light play a major role in helping Link and Midna locate the fused shadow. an artifact that Midna is hellbent on finding. According to the Light Spirit, we can find a piece of this forbidden power within the Forest Temple. And with that, we take off to retrieve our first piece of the fused shadow. After a short trek through the north side of Faron Woods, we finally reach the entrance of the Forest Temple. However, our path is blocked by a mysterious golden wolf. Link readies his sword and the beast leaps towards him. When Link awakens, he finds himself transported to a strange world overflowing with fog. The wolf from earlier appears again and transforms into an ironclad specter, glaring at us with a single crimson eye. We attack, but the enemy counters our strike, completely unfazed. A sword wields no strength unless the hand that holds it has courage. That line's raw as hell, dude. This is the Hero Shade, also known as the Hero Spirit in the Zelda Encyclopedia. This ghoulish-looking titan is a lot more benevolent than he looks. The Hero Shade is a powerhouse that teaches Link 7 hidden skills, turning him into a true swordsmaster. The Shade's wealth of combat knowledge stems from their time spent in the world of the living, where they were known as the Hero of Time. Yes, according to both Hyrule Historia and the Zelda Encyclopedia, this is the Link we play as in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. This info is also corroborated by the Twilight Princess manga, but again, the manga's not canon and all that. And if for whatever reason that's not enough to convince you, there's also the fact that we can summon the Hero Shade by performing songs that the Hero of Time would know. At the Howling Stones scattered throughout Hyrule, we play multiple songs that originate from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. The Song of Healing, Requiem of Spirit, Prelude of Light, and Zelda's Lullaby. There's also the fact that the Hero Shade is left-handed, just like the Hero of Time. Unless you're playing the Wii version. Okay, I need to get something off my chest. I have a confession, and all that I ask is that you guys don't think any differently of me because of this, alright? See, I am left-handed. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not taking any questions at this time, so please, respect my privacy. When I got my copy of Twilight Princess, I received the Wii version of the game. If you didn't already know, this version of the game is completely flipped. It's a mirrored version of the GameCube game. This was done to better accommodate the majority of right-handed players when using the game's motion controls. It wouldn't exactly feel natural for you to swing your right hand to make Link swing his left. And believe it or not, this was yet another dumb reason why I originally disliked Twilight Princess. I know, it's super dumb, but I was just so happy as a kid seeing that Link was left-handed like me. It totally makes sense why they would change this for games like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, but man, it made me so upset as a kid. I remember when my cousins showed me Skyward Sword for the first time, they were pissed, dude. They were like, oh my god, this game's so ugly, and the motion controls, they're so bad, and oh my god, they have a stamina meter, like what the hell is this? And I was sitting there in the corner like, oh my god, you guys are right, this game sucks, this is so stupid, like I'm never gonna play this game. Meanwhile, I didn't really care about any of their criticisms. I was just mad that they made Link right-handed. Again, I know, very stupid. I don't really think about stuff like that anymore, but it does make me happy whenever I notice some southpaw representation. Want to give a quick shout out to some of my favorite left-handed characters: Sheva Alomar from RE5, Seto from Fragile Dreams, and Freya Crescent from FF9. If there's a gaming lefty that you love, please sound off in the comments. I need to know them all personally. Shit, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, so Link's dead. During our encounters with the Hero Shade, we learn why the spirit still lingers in this world. According to the Shade, he was unable to convey the lessons of his life as a hero to those who came after. Only after passing on all 7 hidden skills, the Shade can finally ease his regrets. Hyrule Historia adds that the Hero Shade lamented the fact that he was not remembered as a hero. This is why he passes down proof of his courage and all 7 hidden skills to Link. Though some people argue about whether or not that statement accurately reflects the Hero of Time's feelings, so take that one with a grain of salt. At one point, the Hero Shade states that this Link carries the blood of the hero. It's implied that he's referring to the Hero of Time, which would mean that this Shade is the Hero of Twilight's great-great-great-grandfather. Hyrule Historia outright confirms this by referring to the Shade as Link's ancestor. In addition to this, once we learn the final hidden skill and speak with the Hero Shade one last time, he says, "Go and do not falter, my child," a statement that I feel makes that familial connection even more apparent. And if that wasn't enough, the spirit refers to a few hidden skills as quote-unquote forgotten ways that do not leave our bloodline. Keywords being our bloodline. So yeah, that's Grandpa. The biggest mystery regarding the Hero Shade is one that remains unanswered to this day. How did he die? There are plenty of theories online that attempt to answer this question. One of the most popular theories I've seen proposes that the Hero of Time died in the Lost Woods after losing his way. There are a couple of variations of this theory that explain why the Hero of Time was exploring the Lost Woods in the first place. Some people think that he went there looking for Navi, while others guess that he may have been trying to return to Kokiri Forest. Whatever the reason may be, Link ultimately ends up dying in those woods. In Ocarina of Time, during the Big Goron Sword side quest, we can find a Kokiri child in the Lost Woods who says this: "Anybody who comes into the forest will be lost. Everybody will become a Stalfos. Everybody, Stalfos." Her words very bluntly suggest that people who die in the Lost Woods eventually become Stalfos. This would explain why the Hero Shade appears as a skeletal monster in Twilight Princess. The Zelda Encyclopedia even mentions the Hero Shade under a section titled Stalfos of Note. So this theory seems pretty solid, right? Well, not necessarily. The biggest issue with this theory is whether or not the Hero Shade can be truly classified as a Stalfos. While the Zelda Encyclopedia does refer to the Shade as a Stalfos of Note, he doesn't look much like a Stalfos. Sure, he's got the skeletal face, but look at the rest of his body. The Shade's arms, legs, and torso are all transparent and difficult to see, but if you look closely, you can see that his body looks more like mummified flesh than bone. This, of course, doesn't line up with the traditional Stalfos appearance. The Hero Shade also has several abilities that your average Stalfos is not capable of, such as being able to transport Link to a fog-filled world to train him. The Shade can also swap between a wolf form and a spirit form, something that I've never seen a Stalfos do. In this spirit form, the Hero Shade can even create clones of himself, a technique we've seen used by Pose rather than Stalfos. It seems more than clear to me that the Hero Shade is much more closer to some type of ghost rather than your basic Stalfos enemy. And if he's not a Stalfos, then he didn't die in the Lost Woods, and we're back to square one. Bummer. But whether or not you believe that the Hero of Time died in the Lost Woods, or he eventually passed in some other way, we can all agree on one thing. This guy's cool as hell. I really like the idea of a Link being able to communicate with other Links from the past. It reminds me of the way Aang can speak with previous avatars in The Last Airbender. It's just such a cool idea, and I'd love to see it reappear in a future Zelda game. Can you imagine Wind Waker Link teaching us how to parry attack, or Twilight Princess Link showing us the mortal draw, or a Link to the Past Link teaching us how to... One last thing I want to bring up about the Hero Shade is their appearance in the Twilight Princess manga. When Link first encounters the Shade, he is terrified. Link originally thought that the Hero Shade was the Grim Reaper attempting to take his soul. Despite bearing the Triforce of Courage, it seems like undead creatures have a knack for upsetting the Hero of Twilight. And yes, while the manga is not canon, Link's fear for the undead is a trait that, surprisingly, is referenced in one Nintendo game. So, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, there is a Wolf Link villager. It's so cool. You can invite this guy to your campground by scanning any compatible Zelda amiibo. Wolf Link even has a few characteristics that reference Twilight Princess. His favorite color is green, his birthday is the same as the release date of Twilight Princess in Japan, and his goal is to become a normal boy. Aww. Wolf Link's Halloween fear is the skeleton hood, a piece of headgear that resembles a skeleton. If you approach Wolf Link on Halloween while wearing the skeleton hood, you'll freak him out and score some free candy. Wolf Link's Halloween fear could be a reference to the hero shade or just Stalfos enemies in general. This information definitely isn't canon, but I think it's really cute, so I had to bring it up. Fun fact, the Epona villager is afraid of the werewolf hood, and the Ganon villager is afraid of the ghost mask. With knowledge of the hidden skill Ending Blow finally ingrained in our minds, we say goodbye to the hero shade and finally enter the Forest Temple. The track that plays in the Forest Temple is another wonderful blend of mysterious and foreboding. Oh man, this dungeon rocks, dude. The temple itself is also straight up gorgeous. I really enjoyed just being in this space. It is a solid dungeon that I remember having a lot of fun with on my first playthrough. The main thing I want to talk about here is the abundance of monsters. It was at this point during my first playthrough when I realized, holy shit, these guys actually look intimidating. Even enemies I never gave much attention to, like the basic Dekubaba, look pretty fearsome. Look at little Audrey 2 right here. These Dekubabas have giant veiny tongues and green saliva that endlessly spills from their mouths. Gross. This game's art style is doing wonders for these guys. It's not even just the Dekubabas, all of Link's adversaries in this game look menacing as hell. But why does Twilight Princess look like this? Especially when the previous game was so cartoony. It's a complete 180. Well, if you have back problems, you probably already know where this is going. Back when Wind Waker was first unveiled, people were not happy with the game's art style. For context, all the way back in the year 2000, Nintendo had shown off a trailer for a brand new Zelda game at their annual trade show, Nintendo Space World. This new Zelda game looked incredible. In this very brief trailer, we see Link and Ganondorf battling in some unknown dungeon. The art style was very reminiscent of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. People were eating it up, and they were more than eager to see what Link's next adventure had in store. In just the following year at Space World 2001, we would get another look at the latest Zelda game. This trailer, as you can see, looks nothing like what we saw at Space World 2000. This new cel-shaded, cartoony look had people pissed off. On IGNboards.com, there's an infamous thread known as the Official Zelda Bitch thread, which is a compilation of threads made by people bitching about Zelda. Pretty self-explanatory. Let's take a look at some of the posts from that thread. Let's face it, boys and girls, this new Zelda sucks ass. Our expectations were raised by the Space World 2000 demo, and now we have this cartoonish crap. And please don't say that A Link to the Past was cartoonish, because it wasn't. Not like this one is. It was as realistic as they could get it on the SNES at the time. Am I still buying the cube? Yes. Will I be buying Zelda? No. It's a rental, at best. Wait, I missed it. Can I get a link or a pic or something? I don't know what happened with Zelda. Wonderful graphics turned into a childish prank cartoon. Has Miyamoto gone nuts or something? Did he start using LSD before SW 2001? I feel so sorry for Nintendo. They lost a lot of Zelda fans, not to mention money. What was Miyamoto thinking? Completely screwed up the Biogeist series. Unforgivable. Do you know anyone who will buy it? No, I meant, do you know of any newborns that will buy it? Screw this. Everybody who says stop bitching or anything like that is insane. This game will suck. Miyamoto has geared this game toward 8 to 11-year-olds. He even said that himself. This means easy dungeons, cartoony graphic, 1 or 2 hits kill a bad guy, and some weird ass plot. The new Zelda looks great. For me to... for things to do list. Get some groceries, hunt down the bastards that killed my Zelda, take over the Nintendo camp and make a kick-ass Zelda game for a hardcore gamer like myself. So as you can see, people were livid that we were getting a game that looked nothing like what we saw at Space World 2000. What's really interesting about this thread though is that there are actually a lot of people defending Wind Waker. A few posts here and there point out how it's really unfair to judge and dismiss a game based solely on its graphics. A lot of users urge people to play the game before casting their judgment, and it's genuinely so refreshing to see people back in the day willing to give this game a chance. Back when I was a kid, I felt like I was going insane because everyone was trying to convince me that this game was garbage. When I was in middle school, Wind Waker HD had recently come out, and it felt like I was being transported back to 2001. So many kids at school were tearing this game to shreds. Like, come on, man, how could you hate this Link? He's a funny dude. One of the comments from the official Zelda bitch thread really caught my attention. All I'm saying is if that GC Zelda happens to look like that when it's released, Miyamoto better realize what he did wrong when he sees that he makes very little profit in the States because so many people object to the new style. This comment got my attention because this is more or less what ended up happening when Wind Waker was released. The game's sales were addressed by Eiji Aonuma directly at the Game Developers Conference in 2007. At GDC, Aonuma gave a presentation focused on the development behind Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, and other Zelda games. During this presentation, Aonuma stated, "At one point I had heard that even Wind Waker, which had reached the million mark in sales, had become sluggish in North America, where the market was much healthier than in Japan. I asked Nintendo of America why this was. What I was told was that the toon shading technique was in fact giving the impression that this Zelda was for a younger audience, and that for this reason it alienated the upper teen audience that had represented the typical Zelda player. Having heard that, I began to worry about whether Wind Waker 2, which used a similar presentation, was something that would actually sell. At this point in time, the devs were developing a sequel to Wind Waker that utilized the same visual style present in the first game. That was until Aonuma decided to give the healthy North American market the Zelda they wanted. In 2003, Aonuma approached Miyamoto and said that he wanted to create a realistic Zelda. This more realistic game was being worked on by the same team that was originally working on Wind Waker 2. A year later in 2004, this new Zelda was shown during E3, and according to Aonuma, it received a standing ovation by the media audience. Clearly, people were extremely happy with the new art direction. And only 2 years later, in 2006, we would get the Twilight Princess that we all know and love today. One thing that you'll notice about Twilight Princess is that the game isn't exactly photorealistic. The game is more realistic, sure, but there's still a lot of exaggerated elements here and there, especially when it comes to certain character designs. Like, for example, why does this doctor look like the human version of Professor Frankly? The game's art style is more focused on stylized realism rather than photorealism. This is something that's actually discussed in an interview part of the Iwata Asks series. During the interview, Satoru Iwata spoke with several experienced developers that worked on Twilight Princess. This included the art director of Twilight Princess, Satoru Takizawa. I want to highlight this specific portion of the interview where Iwata and Takizawa discuss the game's art direction. Iwata states, "Although the visual design of Twilight Princess is indeed realistic, I think it has a unique atmosphere that conventional photorealism cannot offer. There were a lot of people, mostly from overseas, who said they really wanted to play a realistic looking Zelda. I don't think it was easy for you to come up with a visual design that met those expectations." He then asks, "Could you tell me about what you struggled with in that area?" Takizawa responds, "Well, among the artists, it was clear from the start that we would not pursue photorealism in this game. We didn't see any reason to engage the competition in a struggle over who could make the most photorealistic game, or any significance in attempting to recreate the world for that matter. Rather, we felt it would be more meaningful to create something we wanted to make and then show the world what kind of game can be made when you have that kind of passion." So we decided to place our emphasis on creating the palpable atmosphere that everyone liked so much about Ocarina of Time. Choosing to not pursue photorealism was definitely the right call. The stylized realism we see in the final game is gorgeous, and the visuals really set the stage for this game's darker tone. Despite leaning towards realism, the game still feels and looks like a Zelda game, if that makes sense. I feel like that's most apparent in the game's dungeons. Personally, I think the team succeeded in capturing that quote-unquote palpable atmosphere that we feel in Ocarina of Time, as the dungeons in Twilight Princess feel undeniably Zelda. Which leads me back to the Forest Temple. I just went on a 3-page side tangent. I can't make a short video to save my life. The Forest Temple is mostly populated with plant monsters and large insects. The previously mentioned Deku Babas look pretty spooky with that Twilight Princess coat of paint, but those Baba serpents really threw me for a loop. When I first saw these guys, I immediately noticed their sick color scheme and thought they were just stronger Deku Babas. They've got these bright blue tongues and the drool falling from their mouths is purple, so if anything, I thought they might be able to deal poison damage. Then you slice them and their heads pop off, but they continue to chase after you. I was stunned when this decapitated thing was still trying to kill me. It's always so alarming to see an enemy that you think you already know pull off some weird new technique. I think it would be really funny if the next iteration of Deku Babas just sprout legs and chase after you. I like how the Deku Babas in this game have these teeth poking out from the edges of their mouths. It looks a lot like the spines you see along the edges of a real Venus flytrap. In the real world, these are called cilia, and they're used to prevent prey from escaping the trap. I wonder if the Deku Baba's teeth serve a similar purpose. Also, did you know that there are red Venus flytraps? They don't have cool black markings or giant blue tongues like the Baba serpent, but they do possess a nice deep red color. They're very pretty. Detached Venus flytraps can also close their traps, just like how a decapitated Baba serpent will still bite. That's pretty cool, but since they're called Baba serpents, I wonder if they're influenced by real-world snakes that can still bite even after being decapitated. Did you know that was a thing? That's like, oh my god, that's scary. Moving on to some of the creepy crawlies that inhabit the Forest Temple, there are several variants of the Skulltula enemy that, holy shit, these guys are huge! The first Skulltula we encounter appears in one of the first rooms in the Forest Temple. This guy is gigantic, and the rock-hard skull on its back is nightmarish. The skull has these large, empty eye sockets and a mouth full of jagged teeth. And yes, while their appearance did shock me at first, it's just a Skulltula. You know the drill, just wait for them to spin around, hit them in the back, it's no big deal. When this thing dropped down from the ceiling and started chasing me, lost my mind. What the hell, man? You're not allowed to do that. I only started panicking even more when all of my attacks were completely ineffective. I somehow managed to kill it, but in my frenzy, I didn't even really understand what I did right. The trick is that you want to use thrusting attacks to pierce the spider's face. If you use a basic swing, there's a high chance that your sword will be blocked by their skulls. There's another variant of the Skulltula enemy that lacks a tough shield on their abdomen here. These smaller Skulltula hang down from the ceiling and can be easily defeated with the slingshot. Instead of bearing giant skulls on their backs, these smaller Skulltulas have a pattern that vaguely resembles a skull. In the real world, spiders can have vibrant patterns on their backs for a variety of reasons. Camouflage, deterring predators, mating displays, and so much more. This is purely just a guess, but maybe this pattern is meant to mimic the appearance of the large Skulltulas as a way of scaring off predators. The Walchulas have a similar thing going on with a colorful pattern on their backs. Just gotta say that I love the colors on the Walchula. They look pretty. I also really like their skull design. It looks really cartoony and it's just funny. A new enemy that's exclusive to Twilight Princess is the Tile Worm. These guys hide underneath tiles in a room and attack if you step on them. They even creepily glare at you before quickly retreating back into the ground. When you hit them with the Gale Boomerang, they squirm all over the place. Yuck. I feel like now is as good a time as any to bring up Hyrule's resident bug lover, Agatha. In Hyrule Castle Town, we can find Agatha's castle on the South Road. Inside, we meet the bug princess, Agatha, a girl who loves every bug under the sun. I hesitated to even mention her in this video because I remembered people thinking she was creepy, but why? Because she collects bugs, she's some creep? That's not fair. It wasn't until I started handing over some of my bugs when I realized why people thought Agatha was so creepy in the first place. She's got some real interesting things to say about these bugs when you hand them over. Lil Stag Beetle, your spiky pinchers are so sharp. They must feel so good. Okay, that one's a little strange. Lil Snail, just once I'd like to take a bath in that slime. Okay, I get it, gross. If you try to leave without giving Agatha all of your bugs, she'll say, "I know you have bugs." And then she'll growl at Link. Okay, Agatha might seem a little weird and intense at times, but I'd like to defend her. What, this girl's weird just because she's oddly passionate about bugs? You know who's weird? The grown-ass man outside of her house that's constantly peeking through her windows. This guy is a goddamn creep. If we chat with this stalker, he gets very agitated and asks what we're doing at Agatha's castle. He is alarmingly possessive over Agatha. If we talk to him again after chatting with Agatha, he gets even more pissed off. He asks what business we have with her and states that we don't look like we'd have the same interests as Agatha. Then he has the nerve to tell us to stop hassling her. Like, okay dude, you're literally watching her 24/7 through her window. Go die. The stalker's behavior is even more disturbing when you take into consideration that Agatha is a very young girl. We don't have an official source on Agatha's age, but the Prima Games Guide for Twilight Princess states that Agatha is around 10 years old. Yeah, okay, I've heard enough. Send this creep to the Arbiter's grounds. So the next time you hear somebody call Agatha creepy, please divert their attention to the gross bastard right outside of her house. I'm positive that we can all agree that this guy deserves to be thrown to the Shadow Beasts. Back to the Forest Temple, the last thing I want to bring up is this dungeon's boss, the Twilight Parasite, Diababa. At first, it looks like you're just fighting two big-ass Dekubabas, but then the main body comes up, bursting out of the water. It lets out an ear-splitting roar and reveals a giant, grotesque eye in its throat. Despite the creature's fearsome appearance, the battle is pretty simple. They don't stick around for very long, and it makes me kind of sad. Defeating Diababa gets us the first piece of the fused shadow. The last two pieces we need are in the Goron Mines and the Lakebed Temple. We head to the Goron Mines first and prepare to make our way through Death Mountain. Before I talk about the Goron Mines, I want to bring up a story scene that happens at Kakariko Village after we get the Iron Boots. In this cutscene, the Ordon Village kids are ambushed by a group of Boblins. The monsters dash towards the group, and a kid named Beth is frozen with fear. Another village kid named Colin notices her hesitation and rushes in to save her. As Link arrives on scene, we see that the Boblins manage to capture this poor kid. We race after the Boblins, and what follows is one of the most badass scenes in Zelda history. I've said it before and I'll say it 1,000 times more. This Link, so damn cool. The monster we battle to rescue Colin is known as King Boblin. He first appears at the beginning of the game when the Boblins break their way into Ordon Spring. The king enters on top of a demonic-looking boar. He scans the area before turning towards the rushing water and molding his wrinkled face into a fiendish grin. This guy never failed to give me the creeps. I'm not even entirely sure what it is about him that exudes this unnerving aura. What's really cool about King Boblin is that he's able to leave such a lasting impression without speaking a single word. Another one of the king's most intimidating qualities is their ability to repeatedly bounce back from death's door. After our battle with King Boblin at Eldin Bridge, he's knocked into the dark pit below. You think that's the end of him, but he somehow appears again at the Great Bridge of Hylia. We again send him into the pit below, but he appears yet again in the Gerudo Desert. How the hell did he survive all of that? The king's appearance in the desert is particularly spooky. We enter this dark stable and find a single boar all by itself. When we approach it, we see a pair of beady red eyes suddenly pierce the darkness. The king then silently strides into the light and begins his relentless assault. He is definitely a worthy addition to the Dark Lord's army. Our fourth and final encounter with King Bulblin occurs at Hyrule Castle. The king drops down from the sky and, shockingly, he speaks to us. After a difficult battle, the king smiles and hands Link a small key. Before riding off on his boar, the king tells us that he follows the strongest side, as it is all he has ever known. Then he rides off, never to be seen again. Even Midna is shocked at the king's ability to speak, something that most monsters aren't even capable of. What really gets me is that we never kill King Bulblin. Every time, without fail, he gets up and continues living. Even in our final encounter, it doesn't feel like the king ends the battle because he's on the verge of defeat. This monster is repeatedly struck with the full force of the Master Sword, but he's not falling to his knees in exhaustion. The king is standing tall on his own 2 feet and smiling. This Bulblin is more than worthy of his king title. He is a legend among monsters. Moving on to the Goron Mines, I actually don't have a whole lot to say about this dungeon. There aren't too many creepy or spooky features here for us to talk about. I will say though that the boss of this dungeon is pretty intimidating. This is the Twilight Igniter, Phyrus. This flaming demon is a Goron named Darbus, the patriarch of the Gorons. The light spirits entrusted the Gorons with a piece of the fused shadow, asking them to protect this special artifact. But when Darbus reached out and touched the fused shadow, he was transformed into this fiery creature. While I myself wasn't all too freaked out by Phyrus, I knew a lot of people who played this game as a kid and got really scared by this guy. I can totally see why too. Aiming for that gem on Phyrus's head as he charges towards you is extremely nerve-wracking. But it is pretty funny that we just beat this guy by tripping him over and over. What a nerd. Phyrus has a weird opaque body that's covered in these strange moving embers. It reminds me a lot of the smoky Prague from Pikmin, and that awakened a lot of unpleasant memories. With Phyrus defeated and Darbus returned to normal, we take the fused shadow and continue on our journey. We head on down to Lake Hylia in Lanayru Province for the final piece of the fused shadow. In Lanayru Province, there is another pocket of twilight that we need to dispel with the Tears of Light. Eventually, we make our way into the Zora's domain and find a waterfall that's been completely frozen. Up ahead, we even find a whole group of Zoras who have been trapped in the ice. It's a gruesome sight. When I first saw these guys, I thought they were a bunch of frozen corpses. It's not all bad though. We do save the Zoras by bringing them a giant hot rock from Death Mountain. We find every Tear of Light, battle this nasty bug monster, and have a short meeting with the Spirit of Light, Lanayru. The spirit knows that we're about to complete the fused shadow, and they have something to tell us about this dark power. This cutscene is a wild ride. Lanayru tells us that long ago in the land of Hyrule, people were content and lived peacefully. But once word of the Sacred Realm spread across the land, many wars ensued. During this time, an obscure group of people referred to as interlopers appeared. These sorcerers wielded powerful shadow magic that they used to try and enter the Sacred Realm to seize the Triforce. At this point in time, the three goddesses intervened and sealed away the magic the interlopers had relied on. The interlopers themselves were sent to the Twilight Realm as punishment for their transgressions. Meanwhile, their magical fused shadow was shattered into 4 pieces and scattered throughout Hyrule. The only piece that the interlopers managed to keep is the piece that Midna wears on her head. Lanayru warns us of the danger in reassembling this dark power. This entire cutscene is full of disturbing imagery. Link murdering Ilia, the interlopers represented by dark links, that blood-curdling scream, and the swarm of Ilias giggling in the darkness. This is the cutscene I heard about at school that gave a few kids literal nightmares. And yeah, it's not hard to figure out why. I feel like this cutscene does a fantastic job at illustrating the poisonous lust for power. It's a hunger strong enough to corrupt even the most compassionate of individuals. Close friends like Link and Ilia would turn on each other in an instant if it meant getting just a taste of the power that comes with a legendary relic like the Triforce. This scene is a stern warning from Lanayru. Having Link experience this vision allows him to fully understand the danger of temptation and the sinister power of the fused shadow. We've already seen in our journey how this artifact lures weak-willed creatures and turns them into vicious monsters. Who knows what would happen to Link if he was unable to resist the toxic allure of the fused shadow? When Link is seen smiling before snapping out of his trance, it seems that even he is not immune to the corruptive lust for power. This vile magic is something that cannot be taken lightly. Lanayru gives Link this vision so that he fully understands what he's getting into by obtaining this relic. The fused shadow is no toy. At this point, the fused shadow may remind you of another magical item that can corrupt its user. No, not that one. For a long time, it's been theorized that Majora's Mask was also created by the interlopers. The oldest post I could find regarding this theory comes from the Zelda Universe forums. In this thread, OP notes that Majora's Mask is full of characters that look just like the ones we see in Ocarina of Time. Hyrule Historia explains that Termina is a strange parallel world where many of the inhabitants look identical to the people of Hyrule. These doppelgangers were often referred to by the Zelda community as Terminian counterparts. OP proposes that the fused shadow could be the counterpart to Majora's Mask. Before I explain the theory further, it's important to note that this theory was not completely OP's idea. They explained that they read a few arguments online concerning the idea, then they made this organized thread explaining the theory further. The first point that OP focuses on is the basic similarities between the story of the two artifacts. For starters, both items were created by mysterious tribes that wielded strong magic. Then, due to their immense power, both items were sealed away to prevent misuse. In the end, both tribes that created these artifacts vanished. The interlopers were sent to the Twilight Realm, while we have no idea what happened to those who created Majora's Mask. We don't even have an official name to give these people. Next, OP adds that both items grant exceptional powers to whoever uses them. With Majora's Mask, Skull Kid is able to curse people, shatter the great fairies, and call the moon to crash into the earth. When Midna is wearing the completed fused shadow, she can morph into a giant monster that can destroy impenetrable barriers. Okay, there's a bit of a power imbalance there, but you get the idea. Furthermore, OP points out the visual similarity between the two items. If you look at the eyes on Majora's Mask and the eye on the fused shadow, they look pretty similar in shape. Additionally, there are 4 pieces of the fused shadow that we need to find on our adventure. In Majora's Mask, we have to collect the 4 boss masks and awaken the 4 giants before we battle Skull Kid. OP connects the masks through the number 4, which kind of seems like a very minor connection in my opinion, but hey, who am I to judge? My theories are dog shit. So The last major point that OP brings up is the fighting style between Zant and Majora's Incarnation being similar. I think I see what they're going for here. Majora's Incarnation and Zant are two very different boss fights, but they're both fast-moving enemies that can overwhelm you if you don't stay on your toes. Also, I feel like the music in both of these fights have a very similar vibe going on. They're both very chaotic. The thread ends with OP acknowledging a few counterpoints to this theory. There are also dozens of comments on this thread from users pointing out all the different problems with this theory, so there's that too. Yeah, sure, these theories aren't the most concrete, but it's fun to just throw ideas out there, you know? Personally, I think the idea of Majora's Mask being the Terminian counterpart to the fused shadow is a cool idea, but I much prefer the idea that Majora's Mask was simply another creation of the interlopers. In Twilight Princess, we see that masks are a big part of Twilight culture. Zant has a helmet mask hybrid, the Shadow Beasts have masks, and Midna has a piece of the fused shadow, which is another helmet/mask type. In Hyrule Historia, we can see concept art for Midna, and in almost all of her designs, she's seen wearing some type of mask. So a mask was always going to be a key part of her design. I feel like it's not that far-fetched to think that the interlopers in the Twilight may have had something to do with Majora's Mask. Also, like we stated earlier, both of these artifacts corrupt individuals who come into contact with them. Plus, even if this is all complete and utter nonsense, we're all just having fun at the end of the day. I feel like people get weirdly angry and upset when people on the internet make these silly little inconsequential theories. Like, it's fine if you don't like a theory or feel like it makes no damn sense, but we don't have to attack people. It's not that serious. Venturing into Lakebed Temple, there's not a whole lot I want to discuss here either. Despite my discomfort with underwater monsters, there weren't too many here that made me feel on edge. Just like with the Goron mines, I want to shift our attention to this dungeon's boss. This is the Twilight Aquatic, Morpheal. My battle against Morpheal is when I noticed some personal growth. Hi, okay, if this is your first Ghost Surge video, I was terrified of monsters lurking in the water in video games. Yet when I played Twilight Princess for the first time and got to this boss, I didn't feel completely terrified. Now, was I still feeling a bit tense? Yeah, of course, but I felt marginally less afraid than I would have if I'd played this game as like a 6-year-old. Even when Morpheal broke out of the ground and started swimming through the arena, I kept my cool. I feel like this fight could have scared the shit out of me if this thing actively pursued Link, but it kinda just floats around. It's not hunting us down like this guy or swiping at us like this guy. Morpheal only fights back if we get too close to its mouth. So if we want to just take a break, we can totally do that. It's honestly a really simple fight. We just have to shoot the eye and we just have to shoot the eye. We shoot. Damn! With Morpheal's defeat, we finally obtained every piece of the fused shadow. We warp on back to Lanayru and head off to... Nearly jumped out of my skin when I first saw this. This is our first physical encounter with the Usurper King himself, Zant. In this cutscene and in the flashback scene at Hyrule Castle, Zant is strangely cool and composed. He confronts both Link and Zelda with unflinching courage, like the ending's already been written. This makes his development later in the game so much more jarring and freaky, but we'll get back to that later. Now that Zant has the fused shadow, we focus on locating the Mirror of Twilight. This magical item functions as a portal between Hyrule and the Twilight Realm. With its power, we can travel to the Twilight Realm and put an end to the King of Twilight. But first, we need to find all 4 pieces of it. The first piece of the mirror allegedly lies in the northern part of Gerudo Desert at the infamous Arbiter's Grounds. According to our good old friend Aru, the Arbiter's Grounds is a prison that was built to hold the worst criminals this land has ever known. Aru claims that prisoners sentenced to death at the Arbiter's Grounds were sent to the underworld by a cursed mirror. This underworld he's referring to is, of course, the Twilight Realm. The prison is now condemned, but it's believed that the cursed mirror still rests within these ruins. Within this sandy tomb, the dead wander the dark halls. The dungeon is filled with spinning blades and spiked traps that ward off intruders. It's also possible that these traps may have been used to prevent prisoners from escaping. That's twice now that we've had prisons in Hyrule that feature death traps that may have been used to harm their prisoners. Why does this keep happening? At the center of the dungeon, 4 lanterns soar out from a dark hallway. The lanterns approach the nearby torches and capture the flames. The lights begin circling Link before shooting off into the farthest reaches of the Arbiter's grounds. Yet, one lantern remains to face Link directly. To reveal the invisible force controlling the lantern, we'll need to use our heightened wolf senses. Good God, these guys are spooky! These are Big Poes, a fitting name for such a tall specter. Big Poes have mummified faces with sunken eye sockets that give them a zombie-esque appearance. It's almost like the spirit of this deceased individual has now possessed their own rotting corpse, and they look downright sinister. Big Poes all wear these large robes with hoods that resemble the outfits worn by Poes in previous games. It's weird though that only the big Poes get robes in Twilight Princess. I wonder if their unique clothing could be a hint that these ghosts were once important people when they were alive. Especially since there are only 4 big Poes in the game and they all appear at the Arbiter's grounds. Here we need to find and defeat all 4 of them to advance deeper into the temple. When big Poes are defeated, their bodies disappear and their lantern shatters. Strangely though, their clothes are the only thing that remains. The weirdest part is that when Link transforms back into a human, he can now see the Poe's robes without needing his wolf sense. How does that work? Even though we may never know the identity of these mysterious monsters, I love the way they look in this game. They're so cool. I also adore how our little ghost hunt serves as an homage to the ghost busting we did back in Ocarina of Time's Forest Temple. The last big Poe we fight even clones itself just like Meg did. The only other type of Poe we encounter in Twilight Princess are the Imp Poes. Take a good look at these creepy little phantoms. Design-wise, these Poes are one of the most unique takes on the Poe enemy. Instead of appearing as a robed figure, these guys manifest as stitched dolls wielding gigantic scythes. This is nothing like the Poes your undead grandpa used to fight. These guys here are much more than your average ghost because these Poes are Reapers. What, did you think those big ol' scythes are just for show? According to Hyrule Historia, that lantern dangling from their feet is actually a cage for the souls of the dead. Oh yeah, these sickle wavers mean business. The first Imp Poe we encounter is found in a home in Castletown. We defeat the ghost by knocking it down and ripping its soul right out of its plush body. Wolf Link is a goddamn menace. On a throne in the center of this room, we find a man that's been turned into solid gold. This is Giovanni, and he explains that long ago he sold his soul to a monster in exchange for riches. Giovanni was indeed granted enormous wealth, but at the cost of being turned into a living statue. He asks us to find and defeat every Poe so that this curse can be lifted. Seeing how desperate Giovanni is to see his girlfriend again and save his cat is so heartbreaking, so of course we're gonna help him out. When we take a look around Castletown, we find a guard who asks us about Giovanni. The guard explains that his girlfriend put out a missing persons report on Giovanni as rumors about his disappearance have spread all throughout Castletown. Turns out that this woman with the guard is Giovanni's girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, I should say. When we find every Poe soul and lift the curse on Giovanni, his first instinct is to go and see his girlfriend. Later, we catch him at Telma's bar crying his eyes out. You know, I'm starting to feel like maybe it was kind of a mercy thing that I left him as a statue as a kid. Back to the Arbiter's grounds, there are many more undead threats than just a few ghosts. The skeletal Stalfos and Bubbles return in Twilight Princess, and they look rad as hell. I like how the Bubbles have these bony, tattered wings with holes in them. Also, I'm a big fan of the way they helplessly bounce around once you hit them. We also have miniature Stalfos. Is there a lore reason why these guys are so small? They're kind of adorable, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, quick side tangent. This isn't scripted, so if I sound a mess, I'm so sorry about that. But Thinking about the Stalfos had me remembering the E3 2005 booth for Twilight Princess. So if you don't know, this booth was cool as hell. I found a video of it on YouTube that's going to be like the B-roll playing right now. It looks awesome. It's like this super dark dungeon area that's full of TVs where people could go and play Twilight Princess. Super neat. But this booth had a lot of really cool features. One really cool thing was that they had this giant Wolf Link puppet that was just going around, sniffing people, just being a nuisance. I love him so much. But another thing that I think is so freaking cool is that in the queue for this booth, there's a Stalfos behind a cage. And this giant Stalfos would like lunge at people and bang on the bars. He's so cool. If we ever got like a Zelda themed expansion at the Nintendo theme park, I need this guy to be there. He is so freaking cool. Can you imagine if we got like a haunted house attraction that was one of the temples from Zelda? Like, tell me that would not be cool as hell. Like, I would be there day one, dude. That'd be so sick. Anyways, back to the Arbiter's grounds. The enemy that shocked me the most is easily this mummified creature. I've seen a few sources online give different names to this monster. Some refer to it as a re-dead knight, while others simply call it a Gibdo. And I feel more inclined to call this thing a Gibdo because of its mummified appearance, and because that's what the Zelda Encyclopedia calls it. So I'm gonna call it a Gibdo. Apologies if that's not very accurate. The Gibdos in Twilight Princess look as horrifying as ever. This is another monster that I feel greatly benefits from that Twilight Princess art style. These Gibdos are wrapped in dirty bandages, covered in fragmented pieces of armor, and even wield colossal swords. Like, these swords are huge. They're almost as tall as the Gibdos themselves. One thing I like about the Twilight Princess Gibdos is that we can see how decayed their bodies are even through the bandages. You can see it in the way their ribcage and pelvis stick out. It really looks like there's an ancient corpse moving underneath those wraps. So spooky. Also, I love how these Gibdos rise from the ground as stiff as a board like Dracula. That's cute. These Gibdos also come equipped with a paralyzing scream that'll leave you vulnerable until you shake off the fear. Once a Gibdo has you frozen, it won't latch onto Link and start chomping him like it would in previous games. Instead, it'll muster all of its strength to lift that massive blade and strike. The only way to evade this attack is by rapidly mashing that A button and hoping that you roll out of the way in time. Although I do like that these Gibdos manage to induce panic when they paralyze you, I kinda wish that they still latched onto Link and took bites out of him. It is pretty nerve-wracking watching a Gibdo wind up their big-ass sword when you're frozen, but there's something uniquely terrifying about watching a bloodthirsty Gibdo saunter towards you. It's also pretty alarming to get grabbed by any disgusting-looking creature, whether that be likes, wall masters, or the dead hand. For that reason, I'd say that the poison mites in this dungeon are pretty spooky, but they don't do any damage. You might not even notice it since your first instinct is to shake off the bugs, but yeah, Agatha was right. These guys are my friends. So while these Gibdos may not be as terrifying as other variants, I do appreciate their badass design. I just hope that the next time we see Redeads or Gibdos, they make them as terrifying as possible. If this thing isn't out there giving some poor kid trauma, I don't want it. Deep within the Arbiter's grounds, we enter a dim room swathed in fog. At the center of this chamber is a gargantuan sword that's been lodged into the ground. Ropes tied to the blade's grip diverge outward from the weapon, each one carrying a talisman. Severing one rope is all it takes to release the demon confined in this sword. This is Death Sword, one of the coolest Zelda bosses of all time. Death Sword's design is just so badass. On my first playthrough, I spent a good few minutes just watching this guy and appreciating his design. The wizened skin, sharp teeth, and a head that looks like a ram's skull make this phantom look straight up demonic. He reminded me a lot of the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. Deathsword is a ghoul that's cloaked in mystery. All the information we have on this guy comes from what we see in Twilight Princess. Official sources like Hyrule Historia and the Zelda Encyclopedia offer little to no insight on this apparition. This has allowed for all kinds of theories to spring up and attempt to explain the origins of this spirit. One of the most interesting theories I've seen proposes that Deathsword's weapon was once used for execution. If we look at the shape of this blade, we can see that it lacks a pointed tip and instead has a blunt edge. This design bears resemblance to the real-life executioner's swords, tools that were once used for decapitating criminals. To cement the connection even further, some of these swords even have text inscribed on the blade, just like Deathsword. This theory posits that the malevolent spirit that wields the sword is a culmination of all the wicked souls that were brought to death by this blade. Another fun theory presumes that Deathsword is based on a creature from Japanese folklore. According to legend, once an object has existed for 100 years, it comes to life. These creatures are known as Tsukumogami. One of the most popular Tsukumogami that you may have seen before is the Kasa Obake, a living umbrella. They're known for being pranksters, often sneaking up on humans and licking them with their giant tongues. If a little umbrella can turn into a mischievous trickster, it only makes sense that an executioner's sword would turn into a terrifying demon. When Deathsword is defeated, the sword shatters and the spirit vanishes along with it. This demonstrates a clear connection between the ghost and the object, so maybe this thing really is a Tsukumogami. Either way, I wish we got to see more of this guy. If we get another Hyrule Warriors game, I would love to see this guy as a boss, or maybe even a playable character. Or maybe an assist trophy in Smash? Huh? Yeah? Please? The main boss of this dungeon is another undead creature. In a room overflowing with sand, we find the remains of a giant skeletal beast. We get close to this pile of bones and suddenly Zant appears on top of the monster's skull. Using his arcane shadow magic, he's able to give life to these ancient remains. Just like with Deathsword on my first playthrough, I was in awe when this guy showed up. This massive skeleton monster is so intimidating. I always wondered what it looked like when it was alive. I've seen a few people online guess that Stall Lord may have been related to the Dodongos or Volvagia, and I kinda see it. Stall Lord has an attack where he'll spew out bright orange gas from its mouth. It's not fire, but it looks similar. Maybe when Stall Lord was alive, it could actually spit fire, but now all it can muster is this poisonous gas. Also, during the second phase of the battle, the track that plays is a remix of the track that was used in the fight with Volvagia and King Dodongo. So maybe it was some sort of dragon dinosaur creature? Before we move on, I just have to say, the battle against Stall Lord might be my favorite boss fight in the entire game. Zipping around on that spinner is just so much fun, dude. Especially when you're able to perfectly weave through all the Stall troops and land a hit on Stall Lord. It is so damn satisfying. The second phase of the battle is pretty great too. Hopping between the two walls and carefully dodging the spinning blades along with Stall Lord's attacks just gets my blood pumping. I'm so sad that we don't get more use out of the spinner. It is a ridiculous Zelda item that I desperately need more of. After crushing those old bones, we move on up to the roof of the Arbiter's grounds and find that the Mirror of Twilight has been shattered. Only one piece remains, and like always, it falls on us to recover the other pieces. Now, I really want to get into the Palace of Twilight and Hyrule Castle, but there's still a lot of stuff I need to cover. So we're gonna go through the other stuff rapid fire, that way we can spend more time on the epic finale of Twilight Princess. Let's begin at the Snow Peak Ruins. We journey out to these old ruins after a Yeti named Yeto informs us that he gave a mirror shard to his wife. Concerned that it could be a piece of the Mirror of Twilight, we go and investigate. Inside the ruins we meet Yetta, Yeto's wife, who tells us that all kinds of bad things have happened ever since Yeto brought the mirror shard here. She tries to tell us where she's been keeping the mirror shard, but she keeps misremembering and it sends us on several detours. Yetta finally remembers where the mirror shard is and she accompanies us to the room where it's being held. If you're sensitive to jump scares, you may want to skip ahead. When Yetta approaches the mirror, she begins to hesitate. What follows is this. Yeah, so on my first playthrough, that scared the shit out of me. The build up to Yetta's transformation had me suspicious, but never in a million years could I have guessed this was gonna happen. Even though I mostly hate jump scares, I have to admit that this scene is pretty good. I love the way the cutesy music box tune twists into a dark, menacing track as Yetta transforms. That little exorcist headspin that Yetta does is absolutely dreadful. It's fantastic. Witnessing how the Mirror of Twilight can turn such a kind-hearted character into a spine-chilling monster is really upsetting. It makes me so glad that Yeto and Yetta ultimately get their happy ending. In the Sacred Grove, we reunite with an old friend. Ooh, he looks like he bites! Skull Kid looks incredibly unnerving in Twilight Princess. I'm pretty sure that the majority of people prefer the Skull Kid design from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, but I still like what they went for here. Skull Kid's face bears an eerie resemblance to the moon from Majora's Mask, and I think that's an awesome detail. I also like his giant leaf cape and the wooden necklace hanging around his neck. In Ocarina of Time, it's hinted that children who lose their way in the Lost Woods turn into Skull Kids. But despite transforming into monsters, these kids still hang on to their playful nature. Like a normal human child, Skull Kids are curious, enjoy playing with other kids, and love to pull pranks on people. The way Skull Kid likely handmade all of these little accessories reminds me of the way a human child might create their own robot armor out of cardboard boxes, or use old towels as capes to play superhero. This Skull Kid may look scary, but I feel like their design emphasizes that they were once an innocent child that was robbed of ever having a normal life. It's simultaneously creepy and heartbreaking. Something interesting about this specific Skull Kid is their ability to summon wooden puppets. When Skull Kid blows on their horn, these puppets come in droves to chase us relentlessly as we explore the woods. The puppets twitch uncontrollably and fly towards us at high speeds, almost like they're possessed. The puppets all vaguely resemble Skull Kid. Not just in their eyes and mouth, but the wooden necklaces they wear look just like Skull Kid's. The puppets also have their own giant leaf capes. It makes me wonder if Skull Kid created these puppets out of loneliness, the same way a human child may seek comfort in imaginary friends or their favorite toys. After all, this is the only Skull Kid we see in the entire game, and they never leave this forest. Skull Kids being prone to loneliness is something that we've seen in the past before too. As much as it irritates me to repeatedly chase this guy down, it's probably the first time he's been able to play with another person in years. It's really depressing when you think about it. Some people believe that this Skull Kid is the same as the one we see in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. If that were true, it would explain why this Skull Kid knows how to play Saria's song, since the old Skull Kid learned this melody from Link. In the Twilight Princess manga, it's heavily implied that this Skull Kid is the exact same one from Majora's Mask. When he notices the mark of the Triforce on Link's paw, he excitedly recognizes him as an old friend. Once again, the manga isn't canon, but it's a very cute moment, and I hope that this Skull Kid was able to find some peace. When I started making this video, I had a general idea of what I wanted to cover and include. The hero shade, the interloper's cutscene, the arbiter's grounds, etc. Those are the things that immediately come to mind when I think of spooky stuff in Twilight Princess. When I replayed the game for footage, I got to the forest temple pretty late at night and I was having a good time. I loved solving puzzles, swinging with the monkeys, smashing pots, and when I saw this, I immediately frowned. No verbal reaction, just silent disdain. I had completely repressed my memory of this thing. It was like I was seeing it again for the first time. What the fuck is this? This is Uku. She's an Uka. I'm pretty sure the kids at school called this thing the chicken with ballistics. Anyways, we can use Uku and her son Uku Jr. as items to instantly warp in and out of dungeons. It's actually pretty handy. So why do they look like that? In the Legend of Zelda Art and Artifacts book, we can find interviews with Yusuke Nakano and Satoru Takizawa, two individuals who worked on the art team for Twilight Princess. During the interview, Takizawa states that he saw Nakano drawing Uku in his notebook during a meeting. Takizawa then approached Nakano and immediately asked, "Can I have her?" So the design was instantly approved. Does that clear anything up? Not really. Let's see, in Iwata Asks interview, Iwata asked where the name Uku came from. Nobody had an answer. Well, that settles that. Hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive. Near the end of the game, we help Uku return to her home, the city in the sky. This place is home to the Uka and they play a large role in helping us advance through this dungeon. At multiple points in the dungeon, we can see Uka that defy gravity by strutting along the walls and ceilings. It's speculated that this dungeon and the Uka may have been inspired by a painting called Another World by MC Escher. I don't think that this has ever been officially verified though, so take this information with a huge grain of salt. All I can find regarding this theory is a post by Digino Gaming, but that's it. Though if this theory did turn out to be true, I wouldn't be surprised. The little bird creatures in the painting look similar enough to the Uka, and the way the Uka defy gravity could have easily been inspired by the way these little birds are positioned. What do you think? And how do you feel about this? She's got a really good personality, you know? With all 4 mirror shards recovered, we're finally able to repair the Mirror of Twilight. With the mirror's power, we're able to travel back into the Twilight Realm. At the ominous Palace of Twilight, we encounter more shadow beasts. But before we attack, Midna explains that these creatures aren't hostile. They're actually Twilight that have been cursed by Zant. They may resemble shadow beasts, but they're surprisingly docile and won't cause any harm to Link or Midna. We enter the secondary palaces in search of a way to access the main palace. Inside these buildings, we find swarms of shadow monsters. We cut through the demons and manage to locate a magical sphere called a soul. We swipe it from the stone hand and make our way to the exit. On the way out, the hand suddenly springs to life with an eerie red glow. It soars up high into the air and drifts towards the soul, attempting to reclaim the stolen artifact. We use our hookshot to grab the soul and head into the next room. Thinking that we're finally safe from the hand, it somehow phases through the door to continue its pursuit. Zant's hands are the reason why I've had gray hairs since I was 18. When the hands creep in on the soul, the music suddenly ramps up and gets disgustingly tense. The hands move very slowly, but that music made it feel like they were always right behind you. Like whatever distance you had gained was already lost. The hand also makes this weird droning noise as it closes the distance. It sounds like a UFO or something. very unpleasant. Whenever I'd spot the hand shadow creeping towards Link, I could feel my entire body tense up. What makes this worse is that we have to safely escort 2 souls back to the Palace of Twilight, meaning we've got 1 more to deal with. It's honestly not too difficult though, considering that you can use the hookshot to grab the soul from practically anywhere. If the hand manages to grab the soul, you can even use arrows and the hookshot to attack it. This will stun the hand, causing it to drop the soul. It's just really easy to panic with that distressing music blaring in your ear. I've seen quite a few horror stories online from people who said this thing terrified them when they were kids. I had the luxury of first playing this game as a teenager, so it wasn't all that bad for me, but believe me, I know that if I had played this game as an 8-year-old, I would have never got past these hands. When we bring the souls near the cursed Twilight, the curse is lifted and they return to their original forms. But even when the Twilight return to normal, they can't communicate with us. If we get close to them, they just let out these spooky groans. Over on the cutting room floor, we can find multiple unused pieces of dialogue that were going to be used for the Twilight. They don't say anything mind-blowing, but it is nice to see them thank Link and condemn Zant for what he did to their world. I wonder why it was cut. With both souls placed in their proper slots, we're able to access the main palace. Inside, we confront the King of Twilight. Ooh, the track that plays during this confrontation is bone-chilling. During this conversation, Zant loses all of his composure we saw in previous cutscenes. He's running around, screaming, contorting his body into weird shapes, and stomping his feet. It's like you're watching a kid throw a tantrum. I love how Zant's personality shift is conveyed through the use of his mask. In previous encounters, Zant is seen always wearing this mask. This is also when he exhibits his calm and collected persona. Before Zant reveals his demented nature, he removes the mask, illustrating to us that his calm personality from before was nothing more than a facade. Zant puts the mask back on during our fight with him, but his true character bleeds through. We see this ourselves as Zant continues to act unhinged even on the battlefield. Though he may seem intimidating, if you pay attention in the battle, you can see how much of a coward Zant truly is. In the first 4 phases of battle, Zant will only attack Link from a distance. If you get close, he'll quickly teleport away. Zant does everything he can to avoid a direct clash with Link, relying heavily on magic to get the upper hand. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of magic, but he's spamming it, okay? In the final phase of battle, Zant's unable to use his magic projectiles, so he begins using 2 swords. Zant is so accustomed to using magic that you can really tell that he has no idea what he's doing with these things. He's just slashing away at whatever's in front of him. He's wildly incompetent when his magic's hindered. Zant can still teleport though, and he spams the hell out of this ability to try and get the jump on Link. His entire fighting style just reeks of cowardice and desperation. It makes it feel so deeply satisfying to crush this loser, or should I say, pop. Hyrule Castle is the last place I'd expect to find so many ghouls. The spirits appear to be Hyrulean soldiers, but they look like zombies. Maybe in a couple more decades they'll turn into badass skeleton ghosts like the Hero Shade. The ghosts are never acknowledged or explained. They appear, guide us through the castle, and we forget about them. They don't play a large role in the story or anything like that, and they're not acknowledged by any of the characters. Still though, I think it's pretty cool that there are more than a few benevolent ghosts out there in the Zelda universe. It's awesome that even in death, Hyrule soldiers retain their loyalty to the throne and assist those who stand with Zelda. Link always gets credit for being Zelda's knight in shining armor, but these guys deserve some love too. The Hyrule Castle ghosts are working overtime. Talk about Working the graveyard shift. In the throne room, we come face to face with the Dark Lord himself, but instead of fighting us directly, he commands Zelda's unconscious body to attack. The puppet Zelda fight is extremely disheartening. Watching her comatose body being puppeteered by Ganondorf is so damn upsetting. On my first playthrough, it made me hesitate to even fight back. I was scared that I was gonna somehow legitimately kill Zelda. I spent a good few minutes looking through my items to see if there was some non-lethal way I could deal with her. Luckily, after a few games of magic table tennis, Midna intervenes and frees Zelda from Ganondorf's control. Also, just need to say that during this fight, you can hear a dark version of Zelda's lullaby playing in the background. It's a sick detail. What follows is a battle with Dark Beast Ganon and a horseback battle with Ganondorf. In the horseback battle, we team up with Zelda to pierce the Dark Lord with light arrows. In Ocarina of Time, Zelda verbally reacts to the battle with Ganon. When Link is knocked down, she screams in terror. Zelda does something similar in Twilight Princess. If you die during the horseback battle with Ganondorf, this happens. She doesn't give a shit, dude. She looks mildly inconvenienced, at best. I was so scared of accidentally killing her during the puppet Zelda fight, but when Link dies, she's all,
"This is my friend, well, an acquaintance, somebody I know slightly. His name's Stink."
And for the finale, we have a one-on-one battle with Ganondorf. No beast forms, no light arrows, no swiping away my master sword, just a good, clean fight. Even though Ganondorf isn't using his horrifying beast form, he is still a daunting opponent. Ganondorf effortlessly parries and dodges our attacks with grace and confidence. It is a complete 180 from Zant. If you don't know the key to beating him, the battle can feel totally helpless. When we eventually knock Ganondorf off his feet, we're able to deliver a brutal final strike. In the following cutscene, there's a chilling moment where Ganondorf sees the spirit of Zant. Nobody knows what this particular moment means. Did Zant kill Ganondorf? Are their lives somehow intertwined? Why was Ganondorf even able to see Zant? In an interview on Miiverse, Mari-chan asks Eiji Aonuma what his intention was with Zant's neck thing after the final battle. Aonuma responds, "To be honest, I'm not sure either. It was a mystery to most of the staff too." Aonuma adds, "The leader of the team that created that scene was well known for being a bit of a lone wolf when it came to making cutscenes. We wanted to make the best of those qualities in him, so we had him make all of the cutscenes for Twilight Princess. When he made that one, I couldn't help thinking, the neck, but I had immense faith in him. Anything he made must be art. I remember thinking that I just didn't get it, so I didn't say anything at the time." So not even Aonuma knows exactly what is happening in this scene. All we know is that Ganondorf's reign has officially come to an end. A huge thank you to all of my supernatural supporters over on Patreon. So I have a fun little story for you guys. So recently, me and my friends were at a convention and we spent the whole day just going through the vendor hall, just looking at the artist alley, having a good time, buying stuff, you know how it goes. And we were just about done. We had been there for a long time and one of my friends was like, "Okay, Have we seen everything we want to see? We want to head out? And I was like, yeah, let's go. But on our way out, you guys won't believe it, I saw a table that was selling Psychonauts merch. And I looked at my friends and I was like, okay, you guys can go ahead. I'll catch up. I just need to take a look real quick. And so I'm looking at the table. They have like these cool little postcards with in-game screenshots, and they've got this cool art that somebody made, and they have this cute little tote bag, and I'm just looking around, you know? And then the woman at the table, she stands up and she starts talking to me about Psychonauts, and I'm like, oh yeah, wait a minute. And she said one sentence to me and I immediately recognized her voice. The person at this table was Nikki Rapp, the voice of Lily from Psychonauts. And I was like, oh my god, are you Lily's voice actress? And she was like, I am. And then we went back and forth talking about Psychonauts, the sequel, the documentary, and it was just such a fun little interaction. And then I bought the tote bag and I had her sign it as well, and I was very excited. And as she was handing me the tote bag, she was like, do you remember that scene from Psychonauts where Lily gives Raz a bracelet? And I was like, oh my god, yeah, of course, that's such a cute scene. And when she hands me my bag, she gives me a little handmade bracelet. And when she hands it to me, she says,
it's kind of stupid, but...
You know, the line from the game. And I was over the moon, dude. I was so excited. If you guys see her at any conventions, definitely go up, say hi, talk about Psychonauts, get a tote bag. It was such a cool and awesome experience, you guys. I'm like really hoping that maybe someday I can see Richard Horvitz at some convention and get him to sign the other half of the bag where Raz is. I think that'd just be freaking perfect, you know? And if you guys ever see any Psychonauts anything at any conventions, let me know and I'll fly over there and buy up their entire stock. Anyways, that is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for listening, watching, playing Zelda games, and potentially playing Psychonauts as well. And if you haven't played Psychonauts, do that, please. And if you really don't want to do that, at the very least, you could check out my videos that I made on it. Yeah? It's whatever. Alright, that is all I have for you guys. Take care.